A 30-year-old man named Brown, who had been working in Malaysia for several years, decided to take time off to return to his rural hometown, where he hadn't visited in a long time. He got off a bus at a small shelter, waiting to catch another bus that would take him to his village. Being in the countryside, only one bus route passed through the village. Brown waited for a long time, and by PM, the bus still hadn't arrived. He peered down the road several times but saw nothing. Even the local village's vehicles hadn't passed by. As dusk fell and the chirping of crickets filled the air, the shelter on the desolate road became eerily quiet. Brown figured that the last bus had probably already passed, so he thought about walking through the darkness to find help rather than waiting any longer. However, when he looked around, he hesitated. Aside from the old neon light at the shelter, there was no other source of light. Fearing the potential danger, he decided to stay and wait. He sat there for a long time, but there was still no sign of anyone, not even a single vehicle. Then, he heard the sound of footsteps approaching from the darkness. As the figure neared the light, Brown saw an old man, dressed like a typical local, with a cloth draped over his shoulder. The old man came to sit at the shelter and greeted him. "Where are you heading at this late hour, young man?" "I am waiting for a bus to take me home." "It's been a while, but I haven't seen one yet." "Where are you headed, uncle?" "I'm here to pick up my daughter. The last bus should be arriving soon." Hearing this, Brown felt relieved that the last bus hadn't yet passed. Soon after, the faint sound of an engine could be heard in the distance. A bus finally arrived at the shelter, and Brown saw a young woman get off. "I'll be on my way now, young man," said the old man before walking off with his daughter. Brown quickly boarded the bus, where he noticed a few other passengers scattered around. He found a seat in the back, near the window, feeling at ease now that he was finally heading home. After a short while, the bus began to move along the road. Suddenly, the bus braked sharply, causing Brown, who had dozed off, to jolt forward. As he sat back up, he looked ahead and saw the bus had stopped to pick up a mother and child. They took a seat diagonally across from him. Outside the window, there was nothing but darkness, and it didn't seem like they were anywhere near his destination. The atmosphere on the bus was unusually quiet. There was no chatter, which made Brown feel uneasy. Out of nowhere, the sound of coughing echoed through the bus. Brown glanced at the woman who had just boarded. Her coughing grew more severe, and suddenly, a coin dropped from her hand and rolled towards Brown's feet. He bent down to pick it up and saw that it was an old, dirty 10-baht coin, covered in black grime. "Excuse me, ma'am, you dropped your coin." Brown called out to her several times, but she didn't respond. He then turned to the child beside her. "Hey kid, your MOM dropped her money." The child slowly turned towards him, revealing a pale, eyeless face, which sent chills down Brown's spine. He froze in terror, his body covered in goosebumps. Brown rubbed his eyes, thinking it must have been his imagination. When he looked again, the child's face appeared normal. He cautiously handed the coin back to the child. The moment the child accepted the coin, the woman picked it up and put it in her mouth, which was something no one would ever do. Horrified, Brown quickly moved to sit at the far back, clutching the Buddhist amulet around his neck in fear. The old bus continued down the bumpy road, passing through desolate areas with no sign of houses or people. The road ahead and both sides were engulfed in darkness, as if the bus were traveling without any destination. Fainu, feeling increasingly uneasy, thought about getting off the bus. Just then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a dry, withered hand emerge from under the seat beside him, before quickly retracting. Startled, Brown convinced himself it was a hallucination. He cautiously leaned down to take a closer look. Suddenly, Brown jumped to his feet and ran to the front of the bus. "Uncle, stop the bus. I'm being haunted." The bus screeched to a halt. Brown rushed to the door, but it wouldn't open. He turned to the driver, who remained eerily still. "Open the door." The bus remained silent, and then the sound of a raspy laugh filled the air. Brown slowly turned around, only to see the other passengers, their pale, eyeless faces staring directly at him. Paralyzed with fear, Brown let out a desperate scream. He pushed and banged on the door, trying to escape. The ghosts on the bus slowly advanced towards him, reaching out as if to grab him. In that moment of terror, Brown gripped his Buddhist amulet tightly, silently praying. A bright flash of light suddenly radiated from him, causing the ghosts to retreat and disappear into the shadows. Brown woke up with a start, gasping for breath. He looked around and found himself still sitting at the bus shelter, under the watchful eyes of a few villagers who had come to wait for the bus. Ignoring their curious stares, Brown tried to gather his thoughts, recalling everything that had happened the night before. The vividness of the events and the lingering fear made it feel as if it had all been real. As Brown pondered over what had transpired, the old bus rolled up to the shelter, snapping him out of his thoughts. He quickly slung his bag over his shoulder and boarded the bus, where he noticed that it was full of people chatting normally. Brown found a seat towards the back, near the window, and looked outside. "Fare, please," the driver called. "One moment, uncle." Brown reached into his pocket to pull out some money, but as he did, a coin slipped from his hand and rolled onto the floor. He bent down to pick it up and froze. Slowly, he reached for the old, blackened 10-baht coin that looked eerily familiar. At that moment, chills ran down Brown's spine. He stared at the coin in his hand, filled with dread. He no longer knew if what happened the night before had been a dream or if it had been real, a question that would haunt him for the rest of his life. And that concludes our Ghost Bus story. You can watch other videos from our channel through the recommended videos and playlist on screen now. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Our admin reads every single one. Lastly, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new videos, and to support us in creating more content. Thanks for watching.